Welcome back to the John and Linetia Show.
We'd like to thank all those Occupy protesters for joining us in the studio last hour.
Also, thanks to our security staff for removing all those Occupy protesters from our studio last hour.
Great.
We'll take them to the electric chair. That's where they belong.
We can breathe.
Protesters. All that hemp. Patchouli.
But it feels good.
Whatever. So a story came out last week. A professor and students at the Columbia School of Law were looking at details of a case. In 1989, a man was executed in Texas for murder. And it, based on what these people came up with, it seems pretty ironclad that the man was innocent. And all these procedural issues and things are coming out, and it's just like, are you kidding? Now, Texas is basically the #1 state for executions.
Yes.
Pretty much, don't care who you are, don't care if you're mentally disabled, whatever. They're gonna kill you eventually. The state of Illinois, as we know, one of the last acts of our horrible former governor George Ryan was to essentially clear out death row of everybody, making everybody's sentences essentially life in prison. I don't think we've technically abolished the death penalty in Illinois, but it just doesn't look like it's going to be applied as much as it has in the past. And a lot of ideas on that. Some of them basically will say that with all the appeals and everything, when you give a death sentence, that it actually costs the state less to just house somebody for life without parole. But really, ultimately, it's the big issue of what if we get it wrong? And it looks like in this one case, they got it wrong in Texas.
Right. Also, they're also looking at this more like a spiritual / morality type thing, too, of not wanting to, execute people because they don't feel like people have the right to.
Well, depends. I mean, you can look at the eye for an eye thing and go, you do have a right. And ultimately, my feeling on the death penalty is I think that it should be there for the worst and the most heinous. I also do feel, and I don't see anything wrong with it, that it is a form of revenge. But I think Texas went way too far. They pretty much were putting people on death row left and right. This kind of thing was bound to happen.
I personally, I understand why the death penalty is there. I'm not a fan of it at all. I'm just not a fan of it at all.
Right.
I don't believe that we should have the right to kill someone else. I feel like we didn't give life, so why should we have the right to take it away? But this is just atrocious and outrageous. What about the family?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, I certainly hope that if there's any family members left and basically all of this comes to light now, that they sue the hell out of the state of Texas.
And they're going to win.
Well, yeah, I can't imagine how they're not going to, and they should get, hopefully a giant settlement. I mean, if I were them, the figure I would look at is $1 billion.
Yeah.
And something that ultimately, you talk all you want about these kind of civil lawsuits, but the large sums that you would sue somebody in a civil lawsuit is what would essentially deter others or cause that institution, in this case, to rethink their course of action. And so ultimately, if the state of Texas goes, we'll settle for $1 million, but we're going to continue killing people in our electric chair, or lethal injection, all that. Well, that doesn't really do anything.
That doesn't solve the
problem.
problem.
But you want to basically give somebody a lesson, and the lesson in Texas would be, don't mess with anybody else. Texas.
Why can't they? I'm pretty sure people are down there protesting. Saying let's get rid of the death penalty.
Very few people.
Or
I've lived in Texas for a while, and it's very Republican. They're very independent. Anybody protesting are not from the area generally, or just a few people in the area. So
sad situation.
Yeah, definitely.
Very, very, very sad.
So, I think actually one of the things I thought about was it's ironic that the state of Texas is doing all they can to defund, to remove funding from Planned Parenthood, because some Planned Parenthood facilities offer abortions, and yet there's this. So ultimately, this man was 27 years old. He was aborted. He was aborted in his 84th trimester by the state of Texas. And it seems like Texas doesn't want Planned Parenthood to do abortions because ultimately that would thin out the herd of people that Texas can kill when they become adults.
Great. Thank you for that analogy. Thank you.
So from one corrupt, maybe not corrupt, from one misguided organization to another, there was the story recently that J.P. Morgan Chase lost $2 billion in financial trades that they, initially were from a department that is supposed to do very safe trades to hedge their bets.
Yes, and we all know a lot of us, kind of trust Chase. Haven't heard really anything about them in the news recently.
Yeah.
Till this.
Yeah. So, I guess ultimately I read something that said, the $2 billion that the bank itself has more than enough to cover it, where they've got something like $19 billion. By the way, if they've got more than enough to cover it, why aren't they lending out more money?
I don't know.
Why are they holding on to all that cash?
That's a good question.
But the other thing is that that the CEO of Chase had been amongst the biggest critics of the government that wanted to put in a lot more regulations following, the bank bailout from a few years ago. It's interesting about this because it basically proves that the regulations need to be there.
Yes, another case of open mouth, insert foot.
Yeah,
again.
These banks, that the whole concept of too big to fail has to go away. And the or let's say this: if you're too big to fail, then the government has got to be basically watching your behind. I know a lot of people be like, "Oh, you trust the government to produce?" I don't trust Chase all alone. So we got to get somebody, okay? And those banking regulators that were supposed to be, that were even non-governmental, like Standard & Poor's, that were supposed to be policing, investments and all that previously, failed, and they weren't government connected. So you got to go somewhere, and if it's got to be the government, it's got to be the government.
Someone's getting fired at some point.
Well, the funny thing is, the first firing was a woman who, supposedly was running this, this area of Chase, and I find it very humorous that essentially I think the Chase CEO found a way to get rid of a woman. Because you see all these CEOs when they go to Congress, and they're all old white men. And it's like all the the people that go and to Congress, protesting abortion, old white men, and it's just it's scummy.
These are the ones, I guess, as we told in the story, we did months ago about how it seemed like people who are rich can do whatever they want.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, if he who has the gold makes the rules. That's the golden rule. All right.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to be rich one day.
It would be nice.
I'll share with you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, you're welcome. Our show today is brought to you by orange tea. It tastes wonderful. Just slice off the top and add hot water. Fun and nutritious. Orange tea. Pick it up where turkey giblet tea and beef water are sold.
You're listening to the John and Linetia Show.